Hi, everyone. This is Jennifer Janacek, Director of Content Strategy with Sound Wisdom. And I'm here today with author Courtney Clark, who is an international speaker and expert on how organizations can leverage adaptability, resilience, and revisionary thinking to drive performance and success and happiness in life and work. So we're going to talk about all of those things, both the personal application and the professional application, and about her new book, ReVisionary Thinking, When You Have to Change Your Plans to Reach Your Goals. So this is releasing today. If you haven't picked up a copy, definitely do that. It's a fabulous book all about innovation, creative thinking, and resilience. So thanks so much for being here with us, Courtney.
I'm so excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, this is a really fabulous topic. And I think one that so many people are thinking about, but don't really know, what to do to get out of a rut. And I just want to read a couple of the questions and lines from the introduction that I just think people will really relate to give them a sense of what they can take away. Maybe you've hit a roadblock and need to make a change. Maybe a change is being forced on you against your will and you're struggling to get acclimated. Maybe you've survived a global pandemic, but the world looks different now and you're trying to find a new normal. So this is a book that's a guide for the what now moments in life. How do you make a new plan when your old one falls apart? Or how do you learn to get some distance and let go of a plan that's no longer serving you? And that's what I want to start out by talking about, because that was something that was just so revolutionary, honestly life-changing for me, because I really took a hard look at some things in my life. But the first question I'd like to ask you is, why do we get so attached to our plans, even when they're not serving us anymore?
Yep. What I found in terms of people having trouble letting go of the plans is that so many times our plans become personal. We believe that our plans are us. The thing that we said that we're going for. I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. These things that we've been aiming for, it's as though they speak to our value as a person, our ability, our smarts. And so how could we let them go? If you identify yourself by what you've been able to accomplish, if you identify yourself by your job and your career, or you're being a parent, or all these things, then when something isn't the way you imagined it, it is like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
That you weren't enough to
Right.
get this done. You weren't good enough at it to make it happen. And
Yeah.
none of those things are true. That's that's not the way our life plans unfold for any of us.
Right.
They become such a part of our identity.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and I can really relate to that. I bet so many of our viewers can as well. And I just want to note, if you're watching live, make sure to ask your questions, post the questions. They'll show up on our end, and we can maybe answer some of those as well. So at any time you have questions or comments, feel free to share them. But that's such a good point, that our plans become connected to our identity. And I think another thing that we conflate, not only our plans and our identity, but our plans and our goals. That was a shift that I had to encounter when I read your book. I was like, is it that we're, our plans and our goals aren't the same thing, so we can still reach our goal. We don't necessarily have to have a new goal, but our path doesn't have to be synonymous with it. Is that right?
That, for me, explained so much about my life. When I started to understand that in doing the research and hearing people's stories and case studies, I went, oh, that I've lived that. And I hadn't even put words to that, because, I thought that my goal was to be on stage, to be a performer, to be an actress. And I went to school to do that. And then I went, oh, that's not for me. Am I giving up on this dream that so many people have, and a lot of people have and give up on, a goal of, being an actor, a singer, or whatever, being famous? That's the goal of like all of this upcoming generation, right? They want to be on TikTok.
Influencers, yes.
Yeah, everybody wants to be famous. And then what I realized, and I did at the time, I could articulate, I don't want to be famous. I want to be important. And And I tell that story in the book of the moment when I realized like, oh, it's different. Like they feel the same, but they're different. And so I started doing things that felt important and where I felt valued and important. But that led me to being back on stage, speaking, being a keynote speaker to organizations. And I'm feeling important and I'm on stage performing. So it all came around full circle. So I actually did ultimately reach my goal, even though I completely changed the plans that I thought I had laid out to get there.
Yeah, because sometimes we also might mistake a goal for being a specific thing. Like we might think we want maybe a specific position or a specific career, like your example, and maybe it's a feeling or, you know, an experience or some sort of value that we're adding, that if we could just define that and extract that apart from like a specific position or a specific industry, then we might still be able to reach what's really our goal, because our goal is more of an experience or a feeling.
Yeah, I had a really cool moment once. I was working with a kind of a small group at an association, and we were doing some work around like focusing to be a little less like chaotic and stressed in our work. So we're talking about focusing, and I had them do this exercise, and the questions were like, if I had the choice, I'd spend an entire day, blah, 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 blah. It's important to me to be seen as, blah, blah, blah. And we, this woman raised her hand because I said, I want you to see if you can find overlaps. Can you find some similarities, a common through line? And the oldest woman in the room raised her hand, and she said, I don't have any common through lines. It's all over the map. If I had the choice, I'd spend an entire day with my grandkids. But you know, what I'm really proud of in life is I was actually one of the founders of this association. I'm super proud of that. It's like, it's, you know, all over the map. And I took one look at it and I said, legacy. The through line of all of this, what you care about is legacy. And her eyes just welled with tears because she realized she actually had been shooting for a consistent goal her whole life. And she didn't even know it. But it's probably why she had been so successful. And so I think when we can know what is that ultimate goal, boy, that sure allows us to stop that, you know, scattershot. Well, I want this because somebody else has it, or I want this because I'm supposed to want this goal. But yeah, if we can draw it back and like, what's the real goal here? Not, oh, I made these plans. If I don't get them, I'm gonna be mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's think more about that. How can we tell? Are there any questions we can ask ourselves or any considerations we can make to determine whether our plans are still serving us?
Excellent question. I think really are you feeling more fulfilled or more frustrated? You know, if you're encountering roadblock after roadblock and things are frustrating, then it might be time to realize that you've hit a brick wall, right? Like that's okay. And if you keep busting up against it, you're going to get bonus points for, I guess, toughening up your knuckle skin.
Yeah.
Maybe the brick wall ends if you just go a block this way.
Yeah.
Yes, if you just go a block this way, why not at least look? Just take a peek.
I love that analogy. It could be like this little brick wall that's not like long on either side, but we just keep ramming up against it. But if we just like walked a couple feet, like we discovered that it doesn't actually extend all the way, right?
I mean, most brick walls just aren't that big.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a great question.
If you move a block or a mile to one side, then maybe you find your way around, or maybe you find yourself a different viewpoint and you go, you know what? Scratch that. Scratch that old goal. I'm not going there anyway. Because now from here, look what else I can see.
Right.
And that looks even better.
Yeah, absolutely. So why is it important that we remain adaptable and flexible in life? Like, how does that really serve us?
Well, the bottom line, why we have to remain adaptable and flexible is because life is changing. Good luck to you. If you have found a way to keep everything staying the same in your life, you are amazing. You should also write a book. But most of us haven't. And so for years, I've been working with groups on resilience.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that I finally wrote this book is because it kept having people, I think, misinterpret. I think resilience can get misinterpreted. And I hear a lot of people talk about resilience as though it is this sense of like internal strength or super, super positive,
Mm-hmm.
What I would call toxic positivity. Like life doesn't give you more than you can handle. Everything's going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
or but I joke that like #blessed.
Yes.
And so that resilience gets misinterpreted sometimes as positivity and optimism or, just strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that's entirely accurate
Mm.
because I think that is an oversimplification of some pieces of resilience. But to me, resilience really relies much less on something attitudinal like strength or positivity and much more on action.
Mm.
And when I started to dig into the research, what I found specifically is that there is an action plan that when you look at the stories of people who have successfully climbed out of a hole, but bounced back from something intense, these stories share moving through this process, which we outline in the book of let go, think up, and move on.
Mm.
Even if the people involved in these stories didn't realize that's exactly what they were doing, they were moving through those 3 stages. And I thought, well, if we need to capture that. We need to tell people what that process looks like, because that's actually, I think, simpler than saying you should be more positive.
Mm. Yeah.
How? What?
I know.
But if we can give people strategies, if we can let them realize like there's 3 stages and you go through this stage and then you can't do the second stage until you've done the first stage, but you do the first stage and then you move to the second stage and then you move to the third stage. And then you will have become resilient. You will have revised your plan in a smart way that allows you to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to share, we've had one comment. I'm going to try to show it on the screen here. Liz Green has shared, most brick walls just aren't that big. That is a keeper. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I agree. That's a great line there. Try to get back up. All right, there we go. So you do structure your book based on those 3 stages. Could you just break down what each step entails for those who haven't read the book?
Absolutely. It came out today, so you probably haven't read it. So the 3, yes, Jen's got it. The 3 stages are let go, which that's letting go of the plan, right? Abandoning our expectations for the way things are supposed to be. Or if you're an organization, maybe that's the way we've always done it, the status quo, the way things have always been done. So we let go of the plan. Then stage 2 is think up. So this I found in the research is the most skipped stage. This is the one that a lot of people just want to zoom right over. But this is where if we pause and take just a moment, we're allowing ourselves the ability to think up what could we do? If we're not going to do the status quo the way we've always done it, then what could we do instead? How could we solve this problem? How could we move forward? And it's important to generate ideas. So what I found, what some of the early readers of the book have told me, a couple of my pre-readers have said that this piece of the book is what surprised them the most. That this is the piece where they've like, I've never heard that anywhere else before. But we talked about idea generation and how we need more ideas, that to have more options better than fewer options. And specifically, if you give yourself this common answer of only 3 choices, a lot of times our brains just default to the middle option. I call it the Goldilocks paradox.
Yeah.
But the story of like Goldilocks and the 3 bears, right? And she comes across their house and it's like, oh, this bed is too soft. This bed's too hard, but this bed's perfect. This porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This porridge is perfect. And our brains do that. When we've got 3 options, we often feel like the middle option, well, no, that's good. we'll just go with that.
Right.
So if we do that to ourselves when we're at a critical juncture in life, we're not giving ourselves the options that we need.
Yeah.
So in Think Up, I walk you through some steps to how do we get creative? Because I was actually surprised to see how creativity overlays with this concept of resilience and adaptability. But the more creative you can be, creative problem solving, the more creative you can be, the more options you're offering yourself, the more you might see a path that you didn't even know you were going to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that, I keep hearing from people in the business school at the university here, my friends there have mentioned that a big trait that companies are looking for organizations is agile learning. Like people want agile learners, people who can be flexible and adaptable and engage in that creative thinking. And what's so interesting about your book is you break down that we do want to skip that brainstorming phase and we just want to push past it and get, from letting go to the action, but, generating the ideas, there is a process we can go through to do that. It doesn't have to be some, mysterious thing where we just sit around with a, flip chart and.
It doesn't have to take forever. What I found, the reason that we don't do this, we don't skip this stage because we're lazy. We skip this stage because we've been conditioned to think that fast problem solving is good problem solving, right? We don't want to, especially if it's a big problem, it feels uncomfortable to not take action right away. It's action bias, right? Is one of the cognitive biases in our brain. We think that we are more productive when we are taking swift action. We don't want to sit around and feel uncomfortable and, well, I don't know what to do. So we go, okay, well, we'll just do this thing. Yeah, it feels good to take action. And what I talk about is how that is a fine thing to do if you know what problem you're solving. If you've solved this problem before, great, solve it the way you've always solved it. Sure, fine. But if you're solving a problem you've never solved before, and most of us are in 2022 in some sort of a new, uncertain environment, the world is different than it's ever been, then it behooves you to just take a moment. It can even be just an extra day. And think about what could I possibly do here and generate some creative ideas. And the studies show that the most creative ideas come later in the process. Because those first couple ideas, that's really close to the status quo, to the way we've always done it. So we gotta just kind of break through the boring barrier, the way we always think about things, and try to see something that we've never seen before.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, you think about it, like we send emails, right? And right after sending it, we discover, it's just something about it. We discover, we had that error there, in that, and we, it's later in the game that we discover, this could have been better. If we just give ourselves that space, we'll discover those better ideas. So have that waiting period before action.
What I learned that I thought was really cool about brainstorming is that, so how everybody has a time of day when they're best. Like I'm a morning person.
Me too.
Well, great. But what I found on the research is that that's not therefore my most creative time of day. Right. That is my least creative time of day. That's when my linear brain is like all kicked into gear and it's like, okay, I can do this and I can do this and I'm really fast and I'm gonna get this done. That's when you should do the things that are rote, that are your regular tasks. Like they require smarts. Don't get me wrong, but they don't require that like non-linear creative thinking. The best time to do that is when your brain is actually a little turned off. So when are you tired? That's where like shower ideas come from. When you're not thinking linearly, when you're not thinking strategically, your brain is free to make these wild connections between ideas. My husband calls it getting thinky. 11 o'clock at night, I'm trying to fall asleep and I'll be like, I gotta write this down. I gotta like lean over, get my computer. The light blares into our faces. But when I'm exhausted and trying to go to sleep, all of a sudden, that's when my creative ideas happen. So if you're trying to creatively solve a problem, don't sit down and do it at your time of day, whenever that is. Do it at the opposite time.
Yeah, that was really eye-opening for me as well. And it makes so much sense because I'm also the most productive in the morning. And so I would sit down sometimes and try to do, writing projects at that time, but it could be the most difficult because I didn't have that space. Like I felt like the adrenaline, like I needed to be doing something. I wanted to be in my flow. And so you're right, that it was an obstruction to all the productivity I could have been doing. So really understanding yourself and knowing when you can do these different types of tasks is really.
Yeah. Morning is when you should edit things like my work that I sent to you with errors in it.
Not many. I mean, very minimal. Courtney's came in very clean and research expert there. Fabulous. So talking about research, what is your favorite or one of your favorite examples of revisionary thinking in action?
Oh,
so many good stories in the book, but do you have a favorite or one of your favorites?
Yeah, I think for me, one of my favorite stories that I lived through was this concept of waiting to make sure that you are solving the right problem. Mm-hmm. So you and I were just talking about this, that when I got back from my honeymoon with my husband, I was not a great cook. And my husband is a great cook. And so I wanted to show off. So I went and took cooking classes and I was proud, and my cooking got better, but it didn't get like amazingly better. I was cooking dinner because I cook more than he does. Mm-hmm. So you'd think at some point I would have gotten better, but he could cook these like elaborate fancy meals. They were delicious. And then, the other 5 nights a week, I'd be cooking. It was fine. It was totally edible. And I'd go back, and Williams-Sonoma just wasn't getting better. So we go on our honeymoon. We end up in Italy. We're eating all this pasta. And when we come home, I get this amazing gourmet magazine. I saw it at the grocery store. So I grabbed it. I was like, ooh, penne salsiccia. We'd had that on our trip. So the next week we go back to the grocery store. We're doing all the shopping. And we're picking out the sausage and the heavy whipping cream and the, unsalted butter. And I'm throwing it in the cart. And my husband looks in the cart. My newlywed husband looks in the cart and he goes, "Is this from Cooking Light?" Like, oh, no, absolutely not. This is from a gourmet magazine, the pasta issue. I cook it that night. It was great. And I turned to my husband and I said, I don't stink at cooking. It's Cooking Light that stinks at cooking, which of course they do not stink at cooking. But when you cook with butter, full fat butter, heavy whipping cream, and sausage, all of a sudden you're a really good cook. And I joke that like in that moment, I had a materials problem, but I'd been trying to solve it for 8 months with skills training.
Right.
And no matter how much skills training I gave myself, I was never going to get so good that I could turn, light sour cream into heavy cream. Like I couldn't overcome the materials that I was using. And I realized that happens so often in businesses, that we have a materials problem and we're trying to solve it with more skills training, or maybe it's vice versa. That we know we have a problem, but maybe we're not totally certain what the problem is.
Yeah.
And so we jump to solve the problem instead of doing that investigation and realizing what else could this be? What else could be lying underneath this? So I found that what else, when it comes to generating that creativity that we need, what else is an excellent question to ask. And not just what else could I do, but like, what else could be underlying this issue? What else could that person mean when they say this? Mm-hmm. And so I realized like, oh, I have definitely experienced that in my lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned that in the book, like even the personal application, we can be very quick to, get hurt or get upset about something that somebody says. But if we can just step back and think about, what else might be going on, what else might be underlying this, then we can approach that conversation differently because we can address what's really at issue and not, maybe what's just being said on the surface. So many applications there.
Yep. That instinct may not be right. So I think what I'm so excited about for this book is that when in talking to people, they're like, oh, that totally applies to my life. And then the next person will be like, oh man, my company is going through this same thing. There are a lot of ways that I believe that this can apply to individual personal experience, but it can also really help organizations. Even when we talk about brainstorming, the idea generation concept, people need to do this better and companies need to do this better. And it will help all of us, because whether it's small scale or large scale, we come up against a brick wall. Things aren't working the way they used to work. They're not falling into place the way we expected. We've been hoping they'll go back to normal, and they're not. And so we have to do this at work and in our personal lives.
Right. How do you reach your goals when your goalposts keep shifting ever so slightly? Yeah.
That could be happening to you simultaneously in both arenas.
Yeah. So just one last question then, and you've already spoken a bit to it just now, but if you could summarize briefly, what is the main takeaway for the reader? What's in this for the reader? What are they really going to leave the book with?
Ooh, what are they going to leave the book with? I think my goal is that they leave the book knowing that there is a strategy, there is a process for how do we encounter something frustrating and unexpected, some kind of change that feels like it's going to set us back from our goals. But instead, it's not. That they're going to feel like they know exactly what to do to still reach that goal if that's what they want. And not feel like they have to change their personality, be more positive, whatever that is. You don't have to change your personality. You do just have to pick up some behaviors. And I want them to feel like they walk away knowing exactly what that set of behaviors is and that they can take them.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, you've heard it from Courtney Clark. Resilience, adaptability, flexibility, creative thinking, all of the skills and more that you'll learn in revisionary thinking when you have to change your plans to reach your goals, which has hit stores today. You can get it wherever books are sold, so make sure to pick up a copy. And thank you all for being here with us today. We hope you learned a lot about how to innovate and to think more about plans and make sure that they're really serving you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Jen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Courtney.
Bye.
Bye.